Welcome in. It's the ORU Baseball Coaches Show here with Connor Clark and the head coach Ryan Folmar here on the ORU Sports Network. We are here at Chapman Park in the Grand Slam Club, and obviously always a great spot to do a coaches show.
Sunny in here today, too.
It's very sunny in here.
Nice.
And
we haven't had a lot of this in a while.
yeah, no kidding. A lot of rain, a lot of washouts, a lot of double headers. Nice to get a ball game in last night down in Stillwater where you really couldn't have drawn up a better weather night for first pitch. That was unbelievable.
Pretty good. 70, no humidity, very little wind. You don't get those kind of days too often this time of year in Oklahoma, so good to get it in.
It was great to get it in. A great game for you guys as well, and we'll dive into that here to begin the show. A 10-6 final last night. ORU winners over Oklahoma State, and let's start with, I know you guys started offensively hot, and we'll get to that in a second, but I was really impressed with Connor Johnson last night. Through 3 innings, struck out 7 in just those 3 innings, gave up only the 1 run. I mean, he came out in attack mode, and he certainly, made that OSU lineup feel him early and often.
Yeah, I think so. I think, again, we've talked about Connor several different times, and it's one of those young guys that needs to gain some experience, and I thought that was a really good outing for him last night, a really good start for him last night. Stuff was really good. He was sharp. He was in the zone. He was in the zone with 3 different pitches. So it's good to see him have those kind of outings and gain a little bit of confidence. We've seen him do that throughout the year. He's had some rough outings, but he's had some really good outings last night or this year, and last night was a reflection of that.
Yeah, it was really impressive to see him, especially in – you go into an atmosphere like that, and, the ballpark is, it's got a big league feel to it down there. They got a good fan base, and a lot of them showed up for that game. And being able to get thrown into that situation, I mean, how do you mentally prepare a guy for that who maybe hasn't seen as much pitching time as some others in that crew?
I don't think you can. I think you throw him out there, and guys kind of get their feet wet. And, again, he started some tough games already this year. So that was just another one against a really good club last night. So it's good to see him gain that kind of experience. Hey, look, we've had 5 different freshmen start games for us throughout the season. So we're excited about this young group. But, again, it's going to take time for them to gain some experience and understand how to navigate their way through a lineup, and not just one time but a couple different times. And, I think you see Connor last night as his start evolved to kind of gain some of that experience and gain a little bit of confidence as well.
We saw the young guys start the game, and then we saw some more experienced arms, and Jared Urey and Dalton Patton come in later on in that one. And both of them pitched pretty well. I know you were kind of singing Jared's praises last time out we talked, and he put together another pretty good outing last night, and then Dalton Patton with a quick 1-2-3-8. It feels like every single time he's out there, it's like, all right, this inning's probably going to take about 10 minutes, and we'll go back to the dugout.
Boom, 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 right? Yeah, I going into the year, we knew our strength was in our bullpen, right? We had some experienced guys, and you mentioned Urey and Patton and Floyd at the back end of the games, and those guys have done that. They've given us experience. They've given us leverage at the back end of games, and when you have a bullpen like that, man, it allows you to do a lot of different things at the beginning of the games that you may not otherwise be able to do. So those guys have been very steady, very good, continue to get better, and they've allowed some of these young guys to really take on some different roles and grow and get some experience.
You kind of answered it a little bit, but I did want to ask you this question regardless. And with that strength that you have on the back end and the confidence that you have in that group, does that allow you to, I don't want to say experiment with that starting role, but allow you to be maybe a little bit more riskier than you normally be? Say maybe, okay, you planned on this guy going 4 innings. Let's see if he can get us a 5th, and if it goes south, well, we can always lean on that other group.
Yeah, without question, especially when you have a guy like Urey, too, somewhere in the middle, or if you have a guy like Patton somewhere in the middle who've pitched in different roles. Those aren't 1-inning type guys. They can go multiple innings. They can come in with guys on base. They're very comfortable fielding their position, so there's a lot of versatility in what they can do. So without question, confidence in those guys allows some of the younger guys that need to gain some experience, work through some of those difficult moments. So, yeah, without question, it's pivotal in our growth.
Now, the pitching was good, but the offense was the story last night. You guys get out, and you score very quickly, 2-0 at the end of the top of the first. And, You guys take advantage of a couple of errors as well, and that's not always the easiest thing to do,
Sure.
but the couple of throwing errors there early that you guys take advantage of. And how about Will Edmondson at the top of the order? I mean, he has been on a tear over the last handful of games, and he did it again last night with 3 hits.
Yeah, been very good. When you have a guy like that at the top, and you have a guy like Cooper too. Cooper has been really good. He hasn't gotten a ton of hits, but he has done everything inside the game to allow us to score runs in terms of situational offense. We've seen him get a bunch of big hits. He's really good with runners in scoring position, but he does a lot of the little things that goes unnoticed inside the game to allow us to score some runs. And he did it in a big moment last night. As you said, Will had a great night. He's had a great week, maybe 2 weeks, really. But he does some of those things, and you saw Cooper come in there, and he lays down a really good bunt to kind of move him up. And so, again, when those two guys at the top are going like that, man, it gives us some room at the back end to be able to do that. But, yeah, Will's been great. I thought what we did in terms of situational offense last night was really good. So we're getting better. I think consistency is the one thing we've talked about. We've seen our offense do that a couple different times this year. We've done it several times throughout the year, so it's not like a one-time thing. But we need to be more consistent with what we're doing, and hopefully over the last couple weeks we've grown a little bit.
Well, something about Combs, too. Over the first 17 games, he had 15 strikeouts to 8 walks. Now, over the last 13 games, he's got 15 walks and just 3 strikeouts. I mean, what have you noticed in his game to allow him to get on base with that walk? Because it's something that we didn't see much of from him early on in the year. Now it's like every single game he's walking.
Yeah, I think, and you can put a lot of our guys, again, 8 of the 9 guys in our lineup are first-year guys. Most of those guys are gaining their first Division I experience. And most of them, if they have some Division I experience, it's kind of limited. Right, so they're still learning how to, number one, play together. Number two, put together at bats. So they're learning, and they're learning how to become a hitter. Not just guys with good swings and some ability. They're learning how to hit and hit inside the offense. And I think, you see that with Edmondson. We've seen him grow and what he's been able to do. And I think Cooper's right there too. What he's done over the last couple weeks. Again, doesn't have a ton of hits to show for it necessarily. But, man, he's doing a lot of things inside the game to make us better.
He's been doing a lot of things, and you mentioned him laying down a big-time bunt late in that game. I think I lays down bunts almost every single game now is Jack Shark, and he does it kind of when you least expect it, and he lays it down that third base line really, really well, and it allowed you guys to put together some runs later on in that ball game. And in that 8th inning as well, I mean, you guys come out and score 4 runs and really put the game away. Was there a message going into that inning, or what was the feel in the dugout just kind of going in and say, because you guys led wire to wire, but the Cowboys, they would inch back here, and then you guys stretch it, and then they'd inch back again. So what was it like going into that 8th inning?
Yeah, the one thing, when teams like that have power, that play well in that ballpark, they're just a swing away. And we saw that in the 9th inning. They hit a big home run in the 9th inning too. So those kind of clubs, you got to try to keep scoring and keep playing. And, that was the message all night. Hey, let's just keep playing, man. Keep letting it fly. And as you said, Jack, man, I would hate to be a third baseman when Jack is playing, right? Because he does a lot of those drag bunts. He's gotten a bunch of those throughout the season. But he also hits a lot of hard ground balls.
He does.
Right down that line. So his hitting pattern is very unique in the situation, and he is tough on those third basemen, man. So he's had a good couple weeks for us too. Adds a unique dynamic somewhere in the middle of that lineup, as you said. A guy you don't expect to bunt a whole lot, but he bunts quite a bit, and he hits a lot of hard ground balls right at the third baseman, and we've seen a bunch of those get through too.
Yeah, it's interesting, the mixture of his small ball ability, but his power ability as well, and not only on the ground, but in the air. He's got a handful of home runs this season as well, so kind of a threat from all angles there. Going into that game last night too, and I kind of felt that up in the booth from the get-go, but the energy just seemed phenomenal from your guys' group, probably one of the best of the entire season. I mean, was it just kind of a, hey, we're playing a big-time opponent type thing, or was it just, everybody was ready to go? You guys have won 2 straight going into that.
I mean, we played a bunch of those kind of games throughout the year, so, I think it's, again, you get through those first 20 games, and it's like a mad dash. Like, hey, what do we need to do to get better? how are we going to get better? And you take these middle 20 games, man, and you just relax and you go, here's what we need to do. Here's the adjustments we need to make. Man, let's go play. And I think guys are starting to relax. They're starting to figure out their role a little bit. And I think the result of that is what you saw last night.
I know you talked about patience last week and kind of learning that from last year's group.
Yeah.
Have you seen that pay dividends so far with this team?
I hope so. I'll tell you in about 20 more games. Right?
That's a fair answer.
I hope so. Again, we knew coming in, a bunch of new faces, and we're really young on the mound, so we're going to have to be patient and go through some of those growing pains to let those guys gain some experience and gain some confidence. So by the end of the year, we'll be where we want to be. So we're trying to stay patient. We'll say that.
Well, it's a tough thing to practice, so
It's really
I give you guys props downstairs. But you guys jump back into Summit League play this weekend against Northern Colorado, and then the following weekend against Omaha. It's pretty much going to be Summit League, Summit League, Summit League from here on out, with a couple of non-con games sprinkled in there. You guys have seen about half the league so far, and just kind of want to get your thoughts on the teams that you guys have seen from the league. And obviously, you played a North Dakota State team that maybe record-wise didn't look that great on paper, but they played a lot of really, really good teams in the non-con, and they definitely showed it. St. Thomas has been off to a really hot start, especially offensively, and you guys were able to get back on track against South Dakota State. So your thoughts so far, and you guys have swept Omaha as well, just on the league and where it stands and kind of that competition that lies ahead.
Well, I'm proud of the league and how we've continued to grow and get better. I think you look at the history of the league, where we started. Again, I've been here 20 years, and we had a short exit from the league, but back in it. And I think one of the biggest things you see is there's good coaching staffs in all the programs. I think it kind of starts there, and guys that work and the league's gotten better. Period. Bottom line, from top to bottom, it is much better. You look at a team like South Dakota State, and that team in a year or two is going to be really good. They're really young. He does a really good job with young players. You talk about Omaha and the wins that Omaha has had throughout the year, right? They beat Kansas, Kansas State. Both those teams are ranked right now. LSU is ranked. They beat them. Last week they beat Nebraska. North Dakota State's played an outstanding schedule, have a couple wins in there. They beat Creighton last night in Omaha. So our league just continues to get better and better.
It's weird because I know you guys will see the Mavericks on the road in 2 weekends, and as a Nebraska guy myself, it hurt me to see them beat the Cornhuskers, but it feels like those, the pocket of Omaha, Creighton, and Nebraska, they'll just kind of beat up on each other.
Yeah.
And when you go play at Tal Anderson Field, I mean, that's not an easy place to play. You mentioned the key wins that they have, and not to mention they beat LSU on the road.
Sure.
So that's probably the best win that the league has had this season. I know you don't want to overlook the Bears here this weekend, but just kind of that challenge that lies ahead in one of the tougher places to play in the Summit.
Yeah, Greeley's not an easy place to play. The conditions are a little bit different than anywhere else that you play in the league. They're at altitude. The surface is a tough surface to play on. It's a hard surface, and the ball carries, and there are certain days where it can be very, very offensive. So, this is a big challenge. Mike does a great job with that group. Again, this is a team a year ago that was in the finals of our tournament. Again, another really well-coached team, and we're going to have our hands full all weekend. We're going to have to go play well. We're going to have to understand the conditions. Again, it'll play a little bit different than anywhere else in the league, so we got to be ready to go.
This is an interesting conversation that I had with both basketball coaches last season because obviously they both go to Denver to play the Pioneers, and altitude may have an effect more so on basketball, but what ways does that affect the game in baseball?
Well, it's very, very different, right? In basketball, you talk about conditioning,
right?
You talk about, how hard it is to breathe at some point. For us, when we play at altitude, it's very different because the ball carry is very different. So I think it affects the game differently, but maybe just as drastically too. So it is different. It is very, very different. I don't know how else other than to say it is
right.
different. So I think it affects your starting pitchers at some point, especially as the game moves on. If the pitch count gets up, it can affect those guys a little bit. And obviously the conditions and ball flight and that kind of stuff. The other thing we battle up there too is it's what they call high sky. Like when the ball goes up, a lot of times it is tough to see. So Again, it's a very, very different place to play.
It's hard to simulate that too. I mean, you can't really do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, when you're going through the motions as a pitcher too, and say you throw a pitch that is designed to get a pop up, but it goes a lot farther than you normally think. So I mean, how do you go about adjusting what to throw and when to throw it throughout that type of ball game?
Yeah, at some point you just got to trust your stuff. If you start pitching, to pitch off the bat, afraid of contact, then you get in a lot of troubles because then you create some free passes in front of some of those big swings. So, limiting free passes becomes crucial. Keeping the ball at the bottom of the zone becomes crucial. So again, it's just I don't know how else to say. It's just very different. It's just very different.
It's not Tulsa.
It is not Tulsa.
We are at sea level. We are not a mile above sea level, so we don't have to deal with that. But you got to feel good about going into said conditions, because I mean, you talk about ball carrying. Everybody in the majors looks at the Rockies, and it feels like all the home run numbers are inflated. But you guys have been hitting the ball really, really well over the last 3 or so games, and it's kind of been a drastic switch from the OU game and then the 2 against St. Thomas. You guys hit 180 as a team, and then over that doubleheader against South Dakota State, you hit 303. Last night you hit over 300 as a group as well. I mean, I know baseball is a game of peaks and valleys,
sure.
Of course, because it's a long season. But is there anything you can point to that has changed with the approach of the guys, or is it just more confidence?
Yeah, well, I think it's a combination of a lot of different things. Look, this game is based on streaks. You're up, you're down, you're kind of in, you're out. I think the more consistent that we stay with our preparation, the more consistent we stay with what we do on a regular basis, the more consistent we end up playing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of times, especially young players, especially teams that don't have a ton of experience, may not understand that as well. So they ride that roller coaster of emotion with when they're playing well as opposed to when they're playing poorly, and they're up and down and all over. And we try to be very consistent with what we do every day, with how we prepare each and every day. And hopefully at some point that reflects in the way that we play very consistent. So we're getting better. We're getting to that point. As we said, starting now, we just got to be a more consistent team on a regular basis.
Now going on the road, because you guys have 8 straight after yesterday away from home, and 15 of your remaining ball games are away from home as well. How do you go about preparing for that? And I know you guys have played a pretty difficult, non-con road schedule. You've got an ASU in there, you've got an Arkansas in there, you've got Oklahoma State in there. So it's been, a tough trip to try and win away from Chapman Park. How do you go about that moving forward of, setting that routine? Because obviously it's different. You're in a hotel. You're not waking up in your own bed and, external factors everywhere.
Sure.
How do you go about, setting that routine for the guys and knowing that, hey, we're going to be away from Chapman Park for a while. We got to take care of business.
Yeah. Again, one of those things you can't really prepare for till you're in the middle of it, right? Understanding how long, we had the trip to St. Thomas, and you jump on a bus and you
right,
and you drive about 12 hours. You get off the bus and you play 2 games, and you drive 12 hours home in the span of 48 hours. That's a lot of time on a bus. So getting used to that kind of routine and understanding what your body's going to feel like and how you need to recover and what you need to do to get going, I think is crucial. So we'll go through some of that this weekend and figure it out. But like you said, we've been at home a bunch, so I think a lot of times when you start to make these kind of trips, it has a chance to really galvanize your team. You get insulated a little bit when you're on the road as to who's around, what you're doing. Everybody's together all the time. So I think there's good that can come out of traveling this time of year.
Well, you mentioned the 12-hour bus rides. I mean, it also gives your team.
Those aren't fun.
No, they're not fun. I can vouch for you on that.
Yeah.
But it gives your team, a chance to, not that they're not close already, but to get even closer. I mean,
sure.
You sit there on the bus for 12 hours and you hear a bunch of guys, yelling at each other over a game, right?
Yeah.
So
it's a little bit competitive in the back of the bus.
Well, that's probably a good thing, though.
That's very good.
I mean, a lot of competitive guys back there, a lot of athletes back there. So hopefully no more 12-hour bus rides.
We got some coming.
But,
yeah.
we'll see. We'll see how that ends up playing out. But moving forward, too, so you guys will play 8 on the road, and so you got Northern Colorado, and then that Monday game at Air Force, which is kind of a little bit of an interesting, Monday action right there. And you guys have played Air Force in the past. And is that kind of a similar situation as to Northern Colorado, where the conditions are going to be pretty similar, or
Yeah,
what's
it
that
will
look
be.
like?
It'll be at altitude, and the ballpark kind of sits up on a hill, and the ball carries there as well. But very, very cool experience. This will be our second trip to the Air Force Academy, and Coach Cass, who's the head coach at Air Force, does a great job with that program. But more than that, he takes the time to visit with our team, talk to them about the academy, give those guys a feel and a tour of what goes on at the academy. And man, it is a really, really cool experience. So the last time we were able to come up here and play them, I told Coach at that time, I said, hey man, every time we come up here, if we get a chance, we're coming here to play. It's different. It means something a little bit more. So a really, really cool experience for our team.
How different is it at an academy rather than just playing at any other school?
It's very different. Their ultimate goal is very different than most of the guys in our program, right? Their ultimate goal is to lead troops, and again, you get to feel some of that, you get to see some of that while we're up there. So when you talk about perspective and putting things in the proper perspective, I think when you play teams like that, you understand what they're doing and how they're doing it. Man, it definitely gives you a different perspective of what you're doing.
And a pretty good ball club as
Really
well,
good.
out of the Mountain West. So that'll be a good test in one of those kind of non-con games that we talked about that are either a part of, I guess, G5 conferences. I don't know what you want to call them now, or Power 5 conferences as well. Got a big game coming up later on this month, and ironically, it's against Oklahoma State as well. But it'll be, the Chapman Park night, and there's going to be a lot of stuff going on. And I know we've talked at length about the renovations here, and I mean, it seems like it's paid off well, not only for you guys, but for the fans as well. I mean, you go back to that OU game, an incredible crowd here, great atmosphere, and pretty much all season there's been a pretty good crowd at these ball games. And how much does that help you guys, in these games? You guys have been pretty good at this ballpark, 15-6 so far, but what's it like having that crowd come out to not only a newly renovated ballpark, but, help cheer on your team and put a good product on the field?
Yeah, I think some of that is downplayed a lot, right? But I think the way your fans interact with your team is extremely important in creating a certain atmosphere that the guys enjoy to play in. So, your fan base is a critical part of your success, is a critical part of the atmosphere that you try to create at the ballpark. And as you said, some of these upgrades that we've had in the stadium, hopefully our fan experience is much better, and hopefully it continues to get better. I know one of the biggest complaints we've had over the last several years were the seats in the stadium, and finally got those taken care of. So we're excited about the growth of our fan base.
I could say I think I'm a fan of the navy blue as well.
Yeah, the navy blue looks sharp. It's amazing what just some paint and some color does to a place, and they've done a great job with the color scheme.
Fantastic facility here at Chapman Park, and the facility that we're currently in right now. You can kind of see it right behind us too, which is a little bit of a plus here in the Grand Slam Club. So before we get you out of here, Coach, I know we talked about the torpedo bats last week with the Yankees. I feel like that storyline's kind of gone away a little bit, but I mean, how much attention have you been able to pay to the big leagues, if any, over the last week or so?
I like to follow our guys that are out there playing. Outside of that, I'm a baseball fan, so I follow as much as I can this time of year. But really, I try to follow our guys and some of their successes. I know, Jose right before the year started was able to sign a new contract, and so happy for him and his family, and obviously that speaks volumes that they signed him to an extension before the first game with a team he never played for before. So speaks volume about him, and Jordan being on a team that's right away in contention for a World Series run. So excited for those guys to get started. Jeremy Hefner, one of our former players, is the pitching coach with the Mets, and what they've done in the offseason and the team they built and the run they had last year. So it's fun for me to watch and follow and be a fan of those guys.
Yeah, the Mets have this one guy, Juan Soto.
Yeah.
I think that's his name. I think he's worth like $500 million. Who knows?
Quite a bit.
Maybe. Maybe he'll lead him to a World Series. Maybe we'll get a Subway Series. Who knows? That'll be kind of fun.
Yeah.
As much of a Chicago guy as I am, that'll be a good watch. But
You know, before opening day when Chicago was 0-2, I felt really bad for all the Cubs fans. So
It felt like, fake opening day, which was kind of a bummer because opening day is obviously just a great day all around in baseball, and everybody gets so excited for it. But not only were we 0-2 going into the opening day, the first two games were at 5 in the morning, our time, because they were in Tokyo. And then they open up on the West Coast with the D-backs
Yeah,
and the A's, so they're
that's right.
starting at 9 o'clock the first week. So I'm like, when am I going to watch these
Yeah,
games?
it was one of those weird series too, and I heard something the other day that one of our players was talking about, but they had brought it up. So at 5 games in, the Rockies were 0-5, but they were 5.5 games back of first place. There were more games behind than games played, so it's strange. I'm glad it's become a global market. I think that's good for our game. I think that's reflected in the rosters when you look at everybody's rosters. So I think you're going to see more of it.
I mean, we've seen a lot of the KBO kind of, explode. We see a lot of former major leaguers in there or guys who are been in the major leagues go there and then come back even better. I mean, that was one of the big storylines with Shota Imanaga. I mean, he was a big-time KBO pitcher. Now he comes into the majors, and he's one of the best arms out there. So have you been able in years past to go out and see some of, your old players go play in the majors, or do you have plans to this year?
Well, I'd love to. I'd love to just take about a month off and go see all of them. But yeah, in limited, right? I think once our season ends, for us, June is probably the craziest month of the year, and then it leaks into July, and the draft now is in the middle of July.
Right.
So the summers for us are not very fun. So. And that's usually the time you're able to see some of those guys. So we don't see them nearly as much as I'd like to see them, just because June and July for us are so crazy and so hectic. But hopefully we get out and get it done this year.
Well, hopefully you're playing a lot of games into late June.
That's
that
right.
would be
That's right.
that would be ideal. But Coach, as always, thanks so much for the time. Appreciate you talking some ball, and we'll reconvene not next week because we'll be on the road, but the week after that when you guys are back home here at Chapman Park. But thanks for the time as always.
Appreciate it.
Well, this has been the ORU Coaches Show here from Chapman Park. My name's Connor Clark. That's head coach Ryan Folmar. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.